Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota.
Do not compare ICE or Border Patrol agents to the Nazis. That's an unfair comparison. The Nazis were willing to show their faces.
They certainly mirror the Gestapo.
This is a small bunch of wannabe Nazis. That's what they are.
Not saying they're Dachau. I'm not saying they're putting people in ovens yet, but these are concentration camps.
Okay.
Even too ridiculous for CNN there at the end. Our country right now is being heavily propagandized by the left, by Democrats, to believe that basic federal immigration operations that have been part of the sovereignty of this country for decades are suddenly now indications of fascism and Nazism because they're being implemented by Donald Trump. And now our immigration enforcers are under attack in a way we have never seen before. Look at how much the attacks against ICE agents are up. Rammed by vehicles, doxxed, stalked, harassed, impeded. You want to know why their faces are covered? So some crazy leftist doesn't go kill their kids. After Alex Pretti was killed on Saturday, we were told that he was a sweet, nice guy who'd never hurt a fly and was just protecting a woman who was attacked by ICE agents. We know that most of that characterization is now false. Pretti was injured just a week earlier, a broken rib, while fighting with federal law enforcement. Much like Renee Good, fully brainwashed by Democrat rhetoric, he seemingly changed almost overnight. The left's narrative is getting some assistance from certain Republicans. Senator Rand Paul, chairman of the Homeland Security Committee in the Senate, calling on the leadership at ICE, CBP, and U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services to appear before the Homeland Security Committee, adding that Congress has a duty to oversee how billions in taxpayer dollars are being spent to secure the border, enforce the law, and protect the American people. And the senator joins us now to talk about this. It's good to have you back on. This move is giving a lot of ammunition to the other side. I'm sure you know that. What exactly are your concerns regarding who's heading these operations, these immigration operations?
You know, I think one of the things that President Trump has done the best has been to control the border. I'm not against the ICE or against their purpose. In fact, if you want people to trust ICE, I think we do need to bring forward and have people understand that there is an independent investigation as to what went on. I mean, nobody can see those videos and say that that man was assaulting ICE agents. He was backpedaling the whole time. Woman was violently shoved to the ground. He was shoved. He was pepper sprayed and then taken to the ground. If we're going to say that he was assaulting the police, I think that leads to more distrust of ICE. So I think an independent use of force investigation, we do this all the time. I mean, when there's a shooting, look, in my town, we had a police officer was shot 8 times by a terrible person. The person riding along was actually able to kill the perpetrator with his bare hands, and yet they still investigate even a good shooting. But I think after seeing this, if you call this a good shooting, you aren't watching the video. This was a real tragedy and a mistake. The man had been disarmed and then was shot 10 times. I want ICE to do a good job. I want ICE to get rid of the violent people in our communities, but we can't have it if we say things like, oh yeah, well, he was an assassin and he was a domestic terrorist. If we say things that are obviously not true, the situation is going to get worse.
I agree that some of the administration made this worse by saying things that obviously were untrue, and we didn't know a lot. We're still wondering. I mean, you do, though, have a guy that is going to pick a fight with federal law enforcement agents, and he's armed with a pistol and 2 extra clips. Why in the hell you'd go fight officers with that in your pocket, I don't understand. You also know that he broke his rib the week before fighting with these officers. So we clearly have a problem on the other side of trying to escalate this situation. Right. Are you trying to just tamp down, I think, what's gotten out of control?
Well, what I would say is, if it were my son and he says, Dad, I'm going to a rally, I'm going to take my gun with me, exactly. I would say not a good idea. But on the other side, I've been to hundreds of rallies with people who are armed. Virtually every meeting I go to in Kentucky, people wear their concealed carry. They wear their open carry. They have the constitutional right to carry. So if we're going to become the party that says, oh, you don't have a right to carry and you might just be shot, there is no reason to shoot somebody. In fact, the gun statistics show that those who carry are like 1,000 times less likely to commit a crime and less likely to draw their weapon. And in this case, It's important to know he didn't draw his weapon. They said he brandished his weapon. That is not true. If you keep saying things that are not true, you're going to encourage more of this crap. But on the other side, does Minnesota need to cooperate?
Yes.
Without question, the sanctuary city policy is part of the problem as well.
Yes. And I truly, honestly believe that the rhetoric that they have spun about these immigration enforcement actions that have been here for a long time and have taken place under Democrats, Republicans, the way they've talked about it is the reason that these people are dead. They have stirred up so much insanity that they've led these people into these moments, and this was probably a mistaken shooting. I don't think it was intentional. I don't think these officers wanted to kill this guy, but he had a gun, and I think things happen fast, and all of a sudden you have a tragedy on your hands. I do agree with you there. I want to get to one more thing before I let you go. You went at it today with our Secretary of State Rubio. Senate hearing earlier saying the U.S. is in violation of both the spirit and the law of the Constitution over the Maduro operation in Venezuela when we pulled him out, brought him to New York. You called it an act of war. I want to show the back and forth.
If a foreign country bombed our air defense missiles, captured and removed our president, and blockaded our country, would that be considered an act of war?
Well, I think your question is about and I will acknowledge you've been very consistent on all these points the entire career. We just don't believe that this operation comes anywhere close to the constitutional definition of war.
But would it be? Of course it would be an act of war. I think we're in violation of both the spirit and the law of the Constitution by bombing a capital, blockading a country, and removing elected officials.
But we didn't remove an elected official. We removed someone who was not elected, and it was actually an indicted drug trafficker in the United States.
So we took Maduro out. I know you're unsure whether or not that was a good decision, but I mean, where do you stand on this right now? Do you think that I mean, if we're about to do the same thing in Iran, where do you stand on that? Do you think that's what's going to happen next? And talk about Venezuela as well.
You know, I'm not opposed to the result. I've been a big opponent of Chavez and Maduro, of socialism in general in Venezuela. I wrote a book, The Case Against Socialism. Yep. So I'm glad he's gone. I hope for the best for the people. My discussion is over who gets to initiate or declare war. Our founding fathers debated this, and they were virtually unanimous from Hamilton to Jefferson, saying that Congress decides when we initiate war. This administration, like really every other administration, defends presidential power, and they say, oh, well, it's not really a war here. Right. And so my point is if another country comes to D.C., bombs all of D.C.'s air defense, kidnaps the president, removes him, and blockades the East Coast, hell yes, we'd declare that war, and even I would vote to go to war at that point. That would be a war of defense. That would be an absolute need for a declaration of war. So logic only works if it goes both ways. If a logic only works when the U.S. says so, that's not logic. It's the same with arresting somebody who is an illegitimate leader. Well, if you talk to Bolsonaro, he'd probably say Da Silva is an illegitimate leader in Brazil. If you talk to Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump was illegitimate in 2016. Jimmy Carter said the same thing. If you talk to Donald Trump, he said Biden was illegitimate in 2020. But we typically don't believe in force as a way of getting our way when we think the elections haven't gone our way. So I think it's important that we talk about this. Look, Netanyahu has been indicted by the International Criminal Court. Right. We don't. We didn't join the International Criminal Court because we would never let our people or our soldiers be tried by some crazy left-wing body. But we also shouldn't acknowledge that Maduro's guilty of a machine gun violation. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. Glad he's gone, but let's really have a discussion over war.
It's an interesting conversation on Venezuela. I think a lot of Republicans are very curious as to what we did there and why and exactly what the end game is. Real quick, in 20 seconds, we're surrounding Iran as we speak. What do you think happens here?
You know, like Venezuela, I hope the leadership and the mullahs are gone, but I am not for intervening without the permission of the people. We're talking a little more like a real war when we're talking about people who actually have the military capability of responding. But we had a mess. We had a 10, 15-year mess in Iraq when we did regime change. We had the same in Afghanistan. The moment we left, after 20 years of pacifying and trying to get Afghanis to love the Western ways, they reverted to the Stone Age in a matter of days. So a lot of places, regime change doesn't work.
We'll have to wait and see. Senator, good to see you. Thanks so much. You know, everybody's reporting the same stories, the same spin. You turn the channel, it's always the same. But not us. We're different. We report the real news. No spin, just the facts. Turn to us, and you won't turn back.
Tune in to Rob Schmidt tonight on Newsmax.